Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Kick Neon, and today we're going to be doing a beat breakdown of my latest song, Recipe for Disaster. A little bit of background on this track. So I had it as a demo for quite a while. I kind of had an idea for one of the verses, and it's very consistent all the way through. I wanted it to sound a bit like the demo, and I'll kind of explain that more as I go, because there's a few instances in here where I tried to swap things out for more expensive plugins or recording things live as opposed to doing it with a VST. They just never really worked. Nothing ever kind of really jumped out at me as improving the track. The sort of texture it had to it from that demo I really wanted to keep. So I'll start with the first thing I've recorded, and what I think is the most important element of this track is the drums. So I'll just play you how that sounds. So very simple, just driving. That was the kind of idea with those drums. First thing I recorded was them, and I just wanted drums that were just driving, keeping the thing moving the whole time. And I'd say like the kind of signature of the song and the sort of opening feel, I guess you'd call it, is that double snare. Which repeats itself all the way through the track. There's not too much variation in the drums, really. There's a few moments where it drops out, as you can see here. The main difference is here when it goes into the breakdown, where the drums basically just go half time. And then pick back up again with that double snare. So yeah, very, very simple, repeating all the way through. Like I say, keeping the beat driving. That was the kind of main adjective that I felt I wanted to achieve using these drums. So one thing that's important to mention is that it is the dry session kit by Ableton, which I believe doesn't come default with Ableton, but you can get it free on their website. It's got a few different presets on there. I believe this is the vintage preset on the drums. I use it quite a lot. I think it's just quite a nice sounding drum kit, and there's a lot of variation with different presets and the adjustments you can make to the sounds. So moving on to the next thing I did, which was the bass. And again, very simple. What I was just saying about trying to swap things out for different instruments, and it just not having that same vibe that the original demo did. Exact same with the bass. So the bass, again, very simple, 16th notes, being played with a free bass plugin called ABPL2, which you get on Plugin Boutique. Just dead simple, following the root notes. That's it. There's no fills, no nothing with the bass. It stays very, very simple. And all that is the plugin, the bass plugin, with a arpeggiator on it set to 16th notes. And then there's a little radiator on it as well, saturator plugin from Soundtoys, just to give it that little bit of grit. That's not on this project, so basically just a little bit of mix in there. So this isn't the original project. This is what I bounced out from the original project, just so I could mix it a bit better and get the vocals in, start to kind of bring it all together. Next is the keys, which is where we start to get the shape of the chords, which again, I use this word so much, is such a simple track. So that is the chords for the majority of the song, apart from the chorus, which is a G major and an E. And that is using a plugin called Velvet, which is an electric piano emulator that I got from Plugin Boutique, quite cheap as well. Just felt it filled out the space nicely, sits nicely behind the guitars, which we'll get onto in a little bit. In terms of mixing, probably also important to mention at this point what I'm using in terms of the sends. So all I'm using is, reverb and delay as comes standard with Ableton, but I'm using Pro R for my reverb, which is the lively medium room preset. I tried a few out, and it just felt, like I said, I wanted it to sound like a demo, like the demo I made for it originally. So I've just felt that this preset didn't change too much. It just sounded really, really nice for the few areas that I did use it, just to make it sound a bit more live. So not too much else to say on the keys, really, apart from no reverb on that, but the delay is the absolute bog standard delay you get when you open Ableton. Didn't change it at all. With the left and right on 3, didn't change it to a ping pong or anything like that. Just stayed, this is default as is, just to give it a little bit of, just to get a few little repeats in there, soften it up just a little bit. So that's the keys. They run pretty much the whole track, drop out a little bit as the start of the second verse. But that's basically it for the keys. Not too much else to say there. Moving on to the guitar. Now, the guitar wasn't on the original demo, so this is all kind of pretty new. I haven't laid this out very well, has I? Because this is clearly the verse, and it's on the chorus. Anyway, it must just be a mixing thing. So let's get into it. So the guitar, I played the guitar. So this is my Fender Cabronita Telecaster being recorded through a Tube Screamer straight into my interface into Ableton. I'll turn off all the processing for now. So quite muddy, you know, very dry, not much going on. These were just to kind of make it sit in the mix a little bit better. And stand out a bit more in the high end, so it complemented the keys a bit nicer. Again, just going between those two chords. I dropped it out for the first verse, and then this is the pre-chorus, this bit. So in terms of the guitar playing, I was playing it in G and E are the two chords. So I was playing it 3rd fret power chord and then like a standard open E chord. But then going into the chorus, I've gone up to the 10th fret on the A string. So it's just a little bit different. I've forgotten I'd done that. So these two are panned hard left and right. I'll explain why in a second. But clearly the alternation for the left and right comes in there. So you get this one little and then that is into the chorus. Now, the chorus doesn't really change anywhere else apart from the notes being played. So it goes C, B, A are the chords for the chorus. But in terms of the guitar, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it really wide and big. So as is probably to be expected with making things wide and big, I panned one hard left and one hard right. So together, just has, it's still quite high end, so there's not too much kind of punch to it or kind of low end presence, but it just fills out a little bit more compared to, just spreads it out a little bit when you're listening to it in headphones, which I think is really helpful for getting a bit of punch in the chorus, which is what I was after. So that is the chorus tone, is those two guitars. Very kind of punk rock, which isn't necessarily the vibe of the rest of the song, but I just love that tone. I love that tone, and I just felt it worked. I just felt it sat nicely with the rest of the sounds, especially with the keys being so soft. I just thought it made sense. So guitars panned hard left and right there, and then going into the end of the track, and then we go into the middle 8, which there's a few changes here actually. So the chords stay the same, they stick with the initial G to E, but we bring in this guitar which has all of the same processing as the rest, but we got a phaser on there just to give it a little bit of movement. The sound of a phaser on a guitar. I love the sound of phaser on anything. I put phasers on hi-hats, I put it on pianos, I put it on the high end of a bass. I absolutely love the sound of a phaser just to kind of keep it moving, which seems to be the theme of this song, is just keeping it moving. So speaking of keeping it moving, I also decided to add in a little extra layer into this middle 8 for a bit more rhythmic dynamics. That's definitely the wrong word, isn't it? Anyway, it's just this piano, which I believe is a Labs, Spitfire Audio Labs piano, one of their grand pianos, which are all brilliant. I use them all the time. Absolutely fantastic. And it's just playing with the chords. Into the pre-chorus. So that's the main variation with the middle 8, and then that's where it goes into the breakdown of the drums that I showed you at the start. Anything else worth mentioning about those? I don't think so. No, the guitar, like I say, basically straight in just through the Tube Screamer. It's the TS9 Turbo, if anyone cares. And then going on to, before we get onto the vocals, we're going to talk about the leads. So there's two leads, one that you hear predominantly through the track, which again comes in basically at the start. So this is a massive by Native Instruments preset. I'll put it on the screen because I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Just as a sort of a pluck, which again is got reverb on it, the Pro R, and then a bit of delay as well. So that's what this sounds like. nice and simple. I think the delay does a lot of the legwork there for the rhythm and the space. I again just really wanted to keep that simple and have it catchy coming in. Nice melody just to catch you straight away as the song comes in. So that is repeated. That is the before the first verse and before the second verse, but then in that gap from the first chorus into the second verse, it plays through that same lead again, and then the second time there is another one which is panned more to the side. This is a guitar bass, which is a Ableton default VST. Fantastic. I use it so much for everything. Whether it is bass, it's a nice long sustained bass that has slide in it as well, so you play different notes and you get a nice slide, or you can use it as a lead if you filter out the low end, which is what I also do a lot. So there's no delay on this is just a bit of reverb, and that's what this sounds like. So lots of work on the pitch wheel for that. You can hear it come straight in with a... And then those two together, I think there's just a nice kind of variation of the staccato plucks and then the nice kind of gliding lead. There we go. So that is all of the instrumental parts of the track. In terms of mixing, I'm using a lot of FabFilter stuff on this, as I always do, because it's just so good, and the presets are brilliant, and the dynamic mixing and stuff like that is just really, really useful. So that is what I use a lot. As you can see, it's everywhere in this project and everywhere in most of my projects. Now moving on to the vocals. So vocals aren't going to sound too great without everything else playing, but I don't really care. This is just how I did it. So the first verse with both vocal layers together sounds like this.
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, and scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest on. I wish that I could be there. Oh, how I wish that I could be there.
So then with everything else.
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, and scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest on. I wish that I could be there.
So my main thing with vocals is that I'm not a very good singer. So what I want to do when I sing is I want to sing in a register that is comfortable, kind of as close to my speaking voice as possible, which I feel like this one is pretty...
You're always lying in your bed when I get home.
It's pretty similar to how I talk. So if we just play it with that...
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, and scrolling on your phone with it.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not particularly exciting, I think, in terms of how it sounds. I think it just sounds a bit flat. And I find that with a lot of my tracks, is that when I record the initial demo vocal, it just sounds a bit flat and, not too exciting. So what I've started doing, and this is kind of a technique I'm still perfecting, but something that I kind of have realised is good for what I want, is that I'll then record a higher vocal, either by using AlterBoy and pitching it up, or just singing higher with a lot of auto-tune, which there is on this. So if I just play that without the low vocal, it's...
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, and scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest on.
Like it's very messy, and on its own would not sound good, but with a bit of auto-tune and with some distortion, which is what Little Radiator's doing there, great saturation plugin. There you go, vocal overheated, just using presets. Why not? They work. It's more about kind of blending the two together. It's not about having two separate takes, if that makes sense. It's more about just kind of adding a bit of interesting stuff to the top end of the original vocal. So
you're always lying in your bed when I get home.
So I just think that the tone of it just kind of makes it just brings it all together. And another thing I've done with this, which I do a lot, is that I didn't want them just stacked on top of each other directly in the center of the mix. So what I'd done is a technique that I use all the time, and there's many other ways to do this. There's many plugins that probably do it better than the way I do it, but it's just the way I've done it for a long time. Is I use a delay, turn the feedback off, dry wet up to 100%, change it to time, unlink them, one down to 1 millisecond and one around 12. You can there's a bit of room to play there, but I typically go for 12. Leave everything else the same. And if you're listening with headphones, you'll hear this. If you're not, you might not. But if I turn it off, so this is on the higher vocal, I turn it off and I just go...
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, and scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest.
So there's a big difference there, and I really hope that comes across. If you're listening with headphones, you should be able to hear it, that it's almost like it's dead central, and then when I turn this on, it goes wide. So it's like in either ear rather than central, if that makes sense. So
you're always lying in your bed
it's dead central,
home, and scrolling on your phone with
and that's
even
wide.
barely a vest on. I wish that...
So it just adds a lot of space to the mix and means that main vocal, so if I play them both together without that spread.
You're always lying in your bed when I get home and scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest on. I wish that
Just means the vocals have a bit more space in the mix, which I like, and I think that's important for how this is supposed to sound. Again, very simple processing, just a bit of reverb on the vocals, and that doesn't change throughout. This is all just comped just to get rid of vocal sounds and little snorts and breaths and lips clapping together and stuff like that. It just doesn't sound. Not a big fan of how that sounds in a mix. So this is going into the second verse. So then with the second verse, I dropped it back down again and just had the one vocal.
You're always lying in your bed when I get home, scrolling on your phone with even barely a vest on. I wish.
But then also with the second verse is that there is another guitar layer that's just chugging. Oh, wrong one. It's that one.
Be there. Oh, how I wish that I could be there. I'd love to take.
So vocals stay low there, and then same again with this bit, keeping it.
'Cause I don't know what's on.
And then when it comes back into that final chorus, you get that. So you've got the breakdown of the drums. I'll play this whole bit just so you can hear it.
'Cause I don't know what's on your mind. I feel I barely do like half the time. Sounds like a recipe for this.
And it just opens up again and just gets a bit more energy back into it. I like that dynamic of it being a bit more chill and then being more energetic, as opposed to just being 100% energetic the whole time. If that makes sense, because it gives it that dynamic, and then when it is energetic, it feels bigger. So that's it. It's a dead simple project, really. Like in terms of the way I've structured things, there's a few interesting things I've done, but it's drums, it's bass, it's keys, guitar, a lead, and vocals, and that's all I really wanted it to be. Like I said, it was based on a demo that I'd made that I liked a lot of the sounds anyway, and I tried re-recording the bass with a live bass. I tried replacing the drums with like addictive drums, for example, keys with one of the FabFilter VSTs, and just none of it sat in the mix how I wanted it to sit based on the demo. So I kept it very simple, and that's what I try and do. I think, to be honest, I think there's just something to be said for trying to keep your tracks simple, especially if you're going to be singing on it or rapping on it. Give yourself a bit of space. It doesn't have to be crowded and changing every 2 bars. It's a song at the end of the day, and doesn't have to be crazy to be good. So keeping it simple, that's how I approach this one. So that is it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have watched all the way through, leave any comments below if you've got any questions about anything that I covered, any plugins that I've used, or any reasons behind the songwriting. If that's something you want to hear more about, is the songwriting side of things, I'd be happy to post videos of that too. But yeah, thank you for watching. Appreciate you being here. If you're new, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. It goes a long way, and I will see you on the next one. Until then, I will see you when I'm looking at you.